I want you to build up this layout on your own. You'll add one text view for the price header here, and then another text view to show $0. Also assign the second text view a view ID of price. Select the whole thing and then copy it. Remember to include the comment up here, which is a note to the reader for Android Studio. There's a ton of preferences. First, we need to modify the activity main layout so that we can add the text views for price. If the device preview isn't showing already, you can click on this link here that says preview in order to make it appear. Now when we change the XML, we can just see it update automatically. Except I do notice that there needs to be a little more vertical space between the price header 16 dp. And then instead of margin, now all the views are evenly spaced, and that looks good. Let's work on the main activity file now. If this Android DDMS window pops up, you can just collapse it using this. If you typed out the code that we gave you, then when you run it on your phone, when you hit the order button, then the quantity is 2 and the price is $10. Now let's try to change the initial value of the variable. Instead of 2, let's make it 5 cups of coffee. It's just one of those days. So when we say display number of coffees, it's going to display 5 as the quantity. If we say display price, then number of coffees is 5, and 5 times 5 should be $25. So let's run it on our phone to see if that's what happens. And yes, it does. Now let's try to change the variable name. I'm going to delete this variable name number of coffees, and I'm going to change this to number of coffees with the new variable name. Cool, now there's no more errors. Let's run the app. When you hit the order button, the quantity is 5 and the price is $25. This is the same behavior you change the variable name developers to use when we're writing our app. Of the information that it holds, quantity of coffee cups ordered, let's continue using this variable name going forward. The first step is to modify the activity main XML layout so that the app looks something like this. Let's go into Android Studio and look at that file. Here's our activity main XML layout file, and we have the preview on the device showing up on the right-hand side here. I can click on this magnifying glass to zoom in to the device. There, that's better now. To build the desired layout, I want to first add a plus button in between the quantity header and the quantity value. We already have a button in our layout, which is for the order button down here. So I can just copy this code. And then I'm going to paste it in between the quantity header and the quantity value in this video. The plus button is going to be very similar to the plus button. Scroll upwards to see the last error. For our app, there was an illegal state exception because it couldn't find the method decrement in our activity. This is also expected because we didn't add the decrement method yet. Let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to copy this method and then paste it below it. I'm going to rename this to decrement. Now this comment needs to be updated. This method is called when the minus button is clicked. To figure out what we're supposed to do within this method, let's go back to the quiz. We've finished 2 steps so far. The last step is for the decrement method in the main activity. We want to create a quantity variable and initialize it to 1. Then we're going to display the quantity to the screen. In the decrement method, we've created an integer quantity variable. I'm going to initialize it to a value of 1 and then display that quantity to the screen. Now let's run it on our device. Okay, cross your fingers that it doesn't crash this time. If I hit the minus button, then yay, it decreases to 1. If I hit the plus button, it increases to 3. So these buttons are working as expected, at least for this stage of our app. Ideally, as I mentioned earlier, we want this to There isn't just one correct way to answer this question. It really depends on what's most useful for you to identify the difference between the incorrect app behavior and the correct app behavior. Here are some of the things that I noticed. In the incorrect app behavior, when you click on the order button, the quantity changes to the same value each time, and it shouldn't change. Next, I also noticed that the price was correct for this quantity value, but really the price should be for the last quantity that was selected in the quantity picker. Again, this is related to the fact that the quantity shouldn't change. Let's look at the existing code for why this is happening. In the activity main layout file, we have the order button declared here. When the order button is clicked, we're going to call a method in the main activity called submit order. In the main activity Java file, here's the submit order method. This is old code from a long time ago that we haven't changed yet, but we create an integer quantity variable and initialize it to 5. We display that to the screen. We also display price as the number of cups of coffee times $5 each. Already this code doesn't make a lot of sense because as we're trying to submit the order, we're trying to update the quantity. And another problem is that we're creating an integer quantity variable when we already have a global quantity variable that's supposed to keep track of the number of cups of coffee. In the main activity, we already have a global quantity variable, so any method inside here can refer to this quantity variable. However, in the submit order method, we're creating a new local quantity variable. Technically, you can have a local variable called the same name as a global variable. This just means that in the context of this method, after this variable has been declared, whenever you refer to quantity, it actually refers to this local quantity. There isn't just one correct way to answer this question. It really depends on what's most useful for you to identify the difference between the incorrect app behavior and the correct app behavior. Here are some of the things that I noticed. In the incorrect app behavior, in the main activity Java file, already this code doesn't make a lot of sense because it's a quantity variable. Whenever you refer to quantity, it actually refers to this local quantity variable with value 5, not the global quantity variable of value 2. To submit your order, you would create a new quantity and then display that on the screen. What you really want to do is just use the quantity that we've been keeping track of as we've been increasing and decreasing the number of cups of coffee. So that's what we should calculate our price off of. To fix our code, we should not declare a local quantity variable. Instead, we should just use this global quantity variable. We should also stop trying to update the quantity on the screen. The plus and minus buttons already handle updating the screen with the proper quantity value. We do, however, want the submit order button to still update the price. But this time, we're going to calculate the price as quantity times 5 using the global quantity variable. I'm going to update the code so that it reflects what we just talked about. Notice that the quantity variable has turned